Okay, so really funny story about my experience with the Star Fox series. My dad was apparently given the disc to Star Fox Adventures one day at his job, and he brought it home to give to me. I'd never heard of Star Fox before, nor had I ever played any Zelda games, so I didn't know that not only was Adventures unlike any other Star Fox game before or since, but that it was very Zelda-esque in gameplay. Eventually I got stuck and never beat the game, but I fully intend to go back and do so, since I remember really enjoying it. Adventures actually introduced a new character that became an important member of the Star Fox team. Crystal is a character that opens Star Fox Adventures, and what sets her aside from every Star Fox character in Smash is her use of a staff, along with her telepathic abilities, which could function similarly to Shulk's counter. While I don't like that they got rid of Wolf as a character, I also didn't like his moveset in Brawl, which, while seemingly different from Fox and Falco's, was just the same thing with a different coat of paint. Crystal would allow for a much different moveset, and varied combos as well, working more as a close combat character with her long-range combat being limited to her staff's range. I see her final smash being similar to either Link's Triforce Slash or Zero Suit Samus's Gunship. Remember earlier how I said it wasn't fair to have to pick one character out of a cast of many that could work? Pokemon is the epitome of that, and out of the 807 Pocket Monsters, only 9 have been featured as playable, the most out of any franchise so far. As you can no doubt tell, coming to a decision for only one isn't easy, but various factors made it a little bit easier. Smash 4 came out in September of 2014 in Japan, while Pokemon X and Y came out worldwide in October the year before. As a result, Greninja, the final evolution of Froakie, one of the 3 Kalos starters, was included. The decision might have stemmed from the fact that Ash, the main character from the Pokemon anime, had a Greninja on his team. Whatever the case, it only makes sense to include another starter, one from the newest generation, Sun and Moon. As much as I'd love to include Incineroar because Litten was my starter and Incineroar is a fighting type, it's also a fire type, which would be made redundant because of Charizard. Primarina is a water type, but we already have Greninja, assuming he's to make a return. Recently, Pokken Tournament DX for Switch actually included Decidueye as a character, so I think it would make sense to keep it consistent both for Smash and Pokken, and to have a starter for each type. Decidueye would be a very ranged fighter, using its signature move Spirit Shackle, which would work similar to Link's bow and arrow mechanics, as well as having Lucario and Mewtwo's Energy Ball moves. Decidueye's final smash would no doubt be its Z move, Sinister Arrow Raid, which would cover the stage in Spirit Shackle arrows. Despite the fact that I've only played a little bit of GX, the F-Zero series is one that's quite fun and, for a racing game, knows just how much speed is too much and how to handle it in great amounts. While it's certainly a shame that Nintendo's neglected the series, it's no secret that Captain Falcon has kept people's hopes up in seeing the franchise make a return. That being said, since being part of the original 12, Captain Falcon stood alone, and I think it would be nice for that to change. Again, the cast of characters from F-Zero is pretty extensive, but I've narrowed it down to 2 characters I think would fit. But as always, only one can be chosen, so sorry to say, I'll have to leave Black Shadow out. He's hulking, intimidating, and, well, pretty much Batman, so what's not to love. But I think I'll go with someone who has been with the series for even longer, and his rivalry with Captain Falcon is pretty well known. Samurai Goro is an assist trophy, and we see that he uses a katana to attack people, so I can definitely see him doing something similar. Despite his pretty large frame, he used to be in the police force with Falcon, so we know that he's more than athletic enough to hold his own. Coming up with the final smash for Goro is very difficult, considering that I can only think of giving him Captain Falcon's. But hey, if they finally give Falcon the Mega Falcon Punch final smash we've always wanted, maybe Samurai Goro's final smash would be unique. I really tried getting into Earthbound since I'd heard time and time over how great of a game it was, and, well, I got pretty bored. It was one of those weird games that was a little too weird for me. Odd, since I really enjoyed Undertale, which was based on Earthbound. I might try to pick it up again and give it another shot, but for the meantime I thought I'd give some insight as to who I think would be a fit for a newcomer. Porky was a character that I wasn't considering due to his role as a boss in Brawl, and like Ridley, would be too big to make sense. Ninten's design is way too close to Ness's to warrant a new slot, and his moves would be the exact same anyway. I think we'll have to look to the still Japan-exclusive Mother 3 to find our answer. The Masked Man, while a secondary antagonist, was still prominent in the story, and the only reason he wasn't the main bad guy was because of Porky himself. But despite also having control of PSI powers, with his energy sword, lightning, and arm cannon, he could no doubt be an interesting addition to the Mother representatives, since both of the ones we have essentially the same moves. The Masked Man could probably use an intense version of PK Love, as opposed to the version Lucas uses as his up smash. Sentry's a bit of a wild card. I've only played and beaten one Fire Emblem game, Sacred Stones on the Game Boy, but I've experienced Awakening and Path of Radiance, so I'm familiar with some of the characters. As such, my bias would want to choose Erica as a newcomer, but despite her wielding a rapier, she'd still be another sword user. If not her, then her brother Ephraim, who uses lances, the only lord to do so. But unfortunately, the only real relevancy those two have is because of the Fire Emblem Heroes app. Every Fire Emblem representative in Smash Bros. Has been a lord, or at the very least a character of great importance in their story. I really understood all of the Chrom memes after experiencing Awakening, and why he probably would have been a better pick over Lucina. Don't get me wrong, I liked Lucina, but she ended up being very Marth-esque, so maybe this Fire Emblem newcomer could bring something new to the table. Something I've come to notice is that there very well could be two newcomers, and this isn't me just copping out. You have to realize that choosing one new character from these games isn't exactly easy, since a lot of them have two separate protagonists. I've chalked my choice down to one of three possibilities, since I'm not really sure what they would go for, especially in this case. From least likely to most likely, they might choose Rowan and Liana from Fire Emblem Warriors, the latest Fire Emblem game at the time of writing the script. They could handle this by making them a gender swap character, similar to Robin and Corrin. The difference here is that Corrin and Robin were avatars, where Rowan and Liana are siblings, but it could work. The reason I think this is the least likely is because Fire Emblem Warriors is a spin-off game, so I imagine that it would make it difficult to include these characters if they've never been a part of the main series. Speaking of which, my second and most likely choice would be Alm and/or Celica from Shadows of Valentia. While not the latest Fire Emblem game, it is the latest in the main series, despite being a remake of Gaiden. They're also a tough choice because you can't just have them as gender swaps since they're completely different characters, but you also can't have one without the other, Fire Emblem Warriors, since they're equally as important. What makes these four characters less likely than my ultimate pick is the fact that not only do they all use swords, but it's also impossible to include one without the other. Well, it would be wrong to, I suppose. Fire Emblem Warriors. So ultimately, my pick for the Fire Emblem newcomer is the Lord from the upcoming Fire Emblem game. I'm sorry if this is a cop-out, but despite the fact that we know nothing about this new game or character, it honestly makes the most sense to me. There's a chance that there'll be a single Lord, and they'll use something other than a sword. That last one's unlikely, but the fact still stands that the newest Fire Emblem on Switch would be the most relevant main series entry at the time, making the likelihood of its protagonist pretty high. And hey, if Roy could debut in Smash before his own game, why not the new Lord? Their final Smash could really be anything, so I'm just going to say that it could be another crit animation, given that I have nothing to go off of. So I clumped all of these characters together because I couldn't feasibly come up with a newcomer from all these franchises, given that in most cases they're either the only character from the respective series, or every other character featured in their games is too generic. It'd be strange to include a polar bear or Topi from Ice Climber, or the Wii Fit Balance Board. Duck Hunt already includes more characters from games that use a Super Scope, and Game & Watch is a series that is better represented in its stages than in its characters. I suppose Professors Hector and Vector from Gyromite could work, but Rob already uses Gyromites. As a result, I sorta like to call this the Retro series, since most of them were standalone titles from the 80s, Wii Fit excluded. And I think that I have to agree with everyone that thinks that Excitebike should be a playable character. Balloon Fighter is represented through the villager's aerial recovery, and if they can make a character like Duck Hunt work, chances are that the Excitebike could work as well. In fact, I imagine the character could have a bike like the one Wario has, except it would be permanent. His final Smash could be similar to Captain Falcon's, except instead of just one car, it would be a ton of bikers, like the Assist Trophy has. This pick is incredibly hard for me to make, given that not only are there very little Kid Icarus games, but I know absolutely nothing about its characters. I was going to go with Viridi, as she seems to be a fan favorite, proving to be very similar to Palutena in that she's also a goddess and also commands her own army. I was also considering Phosphora, the assist trophy that unleashes shots of lightning onto the opponents, since she definitely seemed like she'd be a lot of fun to play as. But I think that if they brought in the main protagonist and the main goddess, why not include the main bad guy as opposed to this guy? Someone who's been with the series for as long as Pit and Palutena have. Medusa. She would be similar to Palutena for the most part, but I can see her having more than enough moves to consolidate her as a character in her own right, instead of Pitu just having a few moves that differ from Pit. She can teleport like Palutena, as well as using her magic, albeit of the dark variety. However, she does have combat methods that are more physical than Palutena, offering different strategies for attack. Her final smash could be turning all on-screen opponents into stone for a short period of time, giving you the chance to get a few strikes in and rack up damage before reverting back to normal.